Climate change is no longer a distant threat. It's a reality reshaping our world today. From melting ice caps to rising sea levels, the impact of climate change is so profound that it's literally redrawing the maps we've come to rely on. This isn't just about geography. It's about the displacement of communities, the loss of biodiversity, and the alteration of ecosystems. Join us as we explore the top 10 ways climate change is transforming our world maps and what this means for the future. Number 10. Rising sea levels. One of the most visible effects of climate change is the rising sea levels caused by melting glaciers and thermal expansion of seawater. Rising sea levels will result in the displacement of millions of people. Coastal communities are faced with the reality of having to move inland or even abandon their homes altogether. Impact on coastal regions. According to NASA, global sea levels have risen about 8 inches since 1880, and projections indicate that they could rise another 1 to 8 feet by 2100, depending on greenhouse gas emissions and ice sheet stability. Low-lying coastal cities like Miami, New Orleans, and Jakarta are already experiencing frequent flooding, leading to the loss of land and infrastructure. With the increasing frequency of sunny day flooding, these cities are facing the harsh reality of living on borrowed time. Displacement of populations. The World Bank estimates that by 2050, 143 million people could be displaced within their own countries due to climate-related factors, primarily sea level rise. This displacement creates climate refugees, who find themselves in precarious situations without the necessary resources or support, further complicating social and economic dynamics. Economic impact. The economic toll of rising sea levels is staggering. Coastal property values are plummeting as homeowners and investors begin to recognize the risks associated with rising waters. Cities must also invest in expensive infrastructure improvements, such as seawalls and drainage systems, to combat flooding. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, estimates that U.S. coastal communities will face over $1 trillion in damages by the year 2100 if no action is taken to mitigate these impacts. Number 9. Melting polar ice caps. The polar regions are warming at an alarming rate, with Arctic temperatures rising nearly twice as fast as the global average. The melting ice is also opening up new shipping routes, such as the Northwest Passage, which could drastically change global trade dynamics. Impact on the Arctic and Antarctic. The melting of ice caps is not only affecting wildlife habitats, but also leading to significant changes in global weather patterns. As polar ice melts, it contributes to rising sea levels and alters ocean currents, which can have widespread effects on climates around the world. The Arctic Ocean is predicted to be ice-free in summer by the 2030s, marking a dramatic shift in our planet's climate system. New navigation routes. Countries are now vying for access to these new waterways and the natural resources beneath the ice, leading to geopolitical tensions. The melting ice not only presents an opportunity for shorter shipping routes, but also raises concerns about increased shipping traffic in a fragile environment, potentially leading to accidents and oil spills that could devastate marine ecosystems. Geopolitical implications. As countries lay claim to new territories and resources, tensions are rising. The US, Canada, Russia, and other Arctic nations are scrambling to assert control over these newfound routes and resources, which could lead to conflicts in the region. In addition to shipping routes, the Arctic is rich in oil and gas reserves, and the competition to exploit these resources is intensifying. This geopolitical landscape is evolving rapidly, with maps of territorial claims constantly changing. Number 8. Changing ecosystems. Climate change is causing shifts in ecosystems around the globe. Species that rely on specific temperature ranges are being forced to migrate to cooler areas or face extinction. As habitats change or disappear entirely, the result is a significant loss of biodiversity. The World Wildlife Fund reports that climate change is a major driver of the extinction crisis, with up to 1 million species at risk of extinction due to habitat loss, climate change, and other human activities altered habitats. Many marine species are moving towards the poles as ocean temperatures rise, disrupting existing food chains and fishing industries. Coral reefs, which host diverse marine life, are experiencing widespread bleaching due to rising sea temperatures, threatening not just marine biodiversity, but also the livelihoods of millions who depend on fishing and tourism. Loss of biodiversity. The disappearance of biodiversity undermines the resilience of ecosystems, making them less capable of withstanding climate. Impacts. This has profound implications for food security, clean water, and human health. Ecosystem services. The loss of biodiversity also affects the ecosystem services that these natural systems provide. Pollination of crops, carbon storage, and clean water filtration are just a few examples of the vital services provided by healthy ecosystems. As species decline, these services become compromised, leading to further challenges for human populations. For instance, declining pollinator populations threaten global food supplies, impacting everything from fruits and vegetables to nuts and seeds. Number 7. Droughts and desertification. Droughts are extended periods of low rainfall, leading to water shortages and negative impacts on agriculture and ecosystems. Desertification is the process where fertile land becomes desert due to factors like prolonged drought, deforestation, and poor land management. Together, they create a cycle of environmental decline, threatening food security and livelihoods, especially in vulnerable regions. Impact on agriculture. Climate change is leading to more frequent and severe droughts, particularly in regions like sub-Saharan Africa and parts of the Middle East. This not only threatens food security, but also affects the livelihoods of millions who rely on agriculture for their survival. As arable land becomes scarce, maps of agricultural zones are being redrawn, pushing farmers to adapt to new crops or techniques. The Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, IPCC, warns that climate change could reduce crop yields by up to 30% by 2050, exacerbating food insecurity in vulnerable regions. Emerging deserts. Desertification is spreading as climate change alters precipitation patterns. Regions that were once fertile may become barren, forcing populations to migrate in search of sustainable living conditions. Countries like Chad, Niger, and Sudan are experiencing significant desertification, which impacts local economies and increases competition for dwindling resources. The United Nations estimates that by 2030, around 700 million people could be displaced by drought, creating significant challenges for both affected communities and their host regions. Number 6. Extreme weather events increased frequency and intensity. Climate change is linked to an increase in extreme weather events, such as hurricanes, floods, and heat waves. These events not only cause immediate destruction, but also have long-term effects on populations and infrastructure. Hurricane Katrina in 2005 and Hurricane Harvey in 2017 are stark reminders of how climate change can exacerbate natural disasters, reshaping landscapes and communities. Research shows that the intensity of hurricanes is increasing due to warmer ocean temperatures, leading to more devastating impacts when these storms make landfall. Changing insurance landscapes. As the frequency and severity of these events rise, insurance companies are recalibrating their risk assessments. Areas previously considered safe are now being classified as high-risk zones, affecting property values and urban planning. Maps of insurable properties are being updated as communities adapt to these changing conditions. For example, areas in Florida and Texas are experiencing rising insurance premiums, and in some cases, companies are refusing to write new policies altogether, leaving homeowners vulnerable. Economic costs. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, reported that in 2020 alone, the U.S. faced 22 separate billion-dollar weather and climate disasters. Number 5. Ocean acidification ***. The oceans are absorbing approximately 30% of the carbon dioxide produced by human activities, leading to ocean acidification. This phenomenon poses a significant threat to marine ecosystems, particularly coral reefs, which are vital for biodiversity and coastal protection. Impact on marine life. As coral reefs bleach and die off, the maps of marine habitats are drastically changing. The National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, NOAA, has warned that by 2100, the oceans could become so acidic that many marine organisms will struggle to survive. Threat to fisheries. Fisheries that rely on healthy ecosystems are also at risk, impacting local economies that depend on fishing for their livelihoods. This could lead to increased competition for resources and a shift in fishing grounds, altering traditional maritime boundaries. Overfishing, combined with the impacts of climate change, creates a precarious situation for fish populations, which are declining in many regions. The Food and Agriculture Organization, FAO, estimates that around 34% of fish stocks are overfished, further complicating the dynamics of global fisheries. Human health implications. Nutritional deficiencies may arise, particularly in developing countries where fish is a primary protein source. The decline in fish populations could also lead to increased food prices, exacerbating food insecurity for vulnerable populations. Number 4. Shifts in climate zones. The alteration in climate zones affects agriculture, local flora and fauna, and even human settlement patterns. Farmers are struggling to adapt to these shifting climate conditions. Areas that previously supported specific crops may become unsuitable, necessitating a change in agricultural practices. Changing climates. As global temperatures rise, climate zones are shifting. Regions that once experienced temperate climates may find themselves in arid conditions, while others could become more tropical. For instance, the USDA's Plant Hardiness Zone map, which helps gardeners determine which plants will thrive in specific regions, has been updated multiple times to reflect these changes. This alteration in climate zones affects agriculture, local flora and fauna, and even human settlement patterns. Impacts on agriculture. Regions in the Midwest. United States that traditionally grew corn may find that rising temperatures and changing rainfall patterns render these crops less viable. This necessitates a rethinking of which crops are planted where, potentially leading to conflicts over water resources and land use. Ecosystem disruption. Changing climate zones can disrupt ecosystems and lead to species migration. Plants and animals may be forced to move to higher altitudes or latitudes in search of suitable habitats, disrupting existing ecosystems. This migration can lead to the introduction of invasive species that threaten local biodiversity. For instance, as temperatures rise, species like the mountain pine beetle are expanding their ranges into new territories, causing widespread tree mortality and altering forest dynamics. Number 3. Economic shifts. Global supply chains. Climate change is reshaping global supply chains. As natural disasters become more frequent, manufacturers and suppliers are forced to reassess their logistics and distribution strategies. Extreme weather events can disrupt production and transportation, leading to delays and increased costs. Investment in resilience. In response to these changes, businesses are investing in resilient strategies to mitigate the impact of climate change on their operations. This includes investing in green technologies, sustainable practices, and adaptive infrastructure. Companies that adapt to these changes are likely to thrive, while those that fail to acknowledge climate risks may find themselves facing significant financial losses. Job market changes. As the demand for green technologies and sustainable practices grows, new job markets are emerging. The renewable energy sector is expanding rapidly, creating opportunities in solar and wind energy, energy efficiency, and sustainable agriculture. Number 2. Health risks. Climate change poses serious health risks, affecting air quality, water supplies, and the spread of diseases. As temperatures rise, heat-related illnesses are becoming more common. The World Health Organization, WHO, estimates that between 2030 and 2050, climate change could cause an additional 250,000 deaths per year due to malnutrition, malaria, diarrhea, and heat stress. Increased allergies and respiratory issues. Air quality is also deteriorating due to climate change, leading to increased respiratory issues and allergies. Higher temperatures can exacerbate ground-level ozone, which is harmful to human health. This is especially concerning for children and those with asthma or other respiratory conditions. Spread of vector-borne diseases. Diseases like malaria, dengue fever, and Lyme disease may spread to new areas, posing significant public health challenges. The Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, CDC, has noted a rise in tick-borne diseases in regions previously considered low risk, highlighting the need for public health agencies to adapt to these evolving threats. Number 1. Geopolitical tensions. As climate change exacerbates resource scarcity, geopolitical tensions are likely to rise. Water scarcity is becoming a significant concern in many regions, with countries competing for dwindling freshwater supplies. This competition can lead to conflicts over shared water sources, such as rivers and aquifers. Migration and refugees. Climate-induced migration is another factor that can exacerbate geopolitical tensions. As people are forced to leave their homes due to rising sea levels, droughts, or extreme weather events, host countries may struggle to accommodate the influx of climate refugees. The United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees, UNHCR, has warned that climate change could displace over 200 million people by 2050, creating complex challenges for governments and international organizations. International cooperation. Addressing the impacts of climate change requires international cooperation. Countries must work together to develop strategies for mitigating climate impacts and adapting to changing conditions. Agreements like the Paris Agreement represent a step towards global collaboration, but achieving meaningful progress remains a significant challenge. Outrow. The impacts of climate change are not just theoretical, they are real and immediate, reshaping our world in profound ways. From rising sea levels to shifting climate zones and increasing health risks, the consequences of inaction are clear. As we navigate these changes, it's crucial for individuals, businesses, and governments to take proactive steps to address the challenges ahead. Together, we can work towards a more resilient and sustainable future. We hope you find this video helpful. Kindly hit the like, share, and subscribe button to see more of our upcoming videos.